o'clock.
6 o'clock over there? 6 o'clock.
It's 6 o'clock and it appears that we have a quorum. I thank everyone for being here. I'll call this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. The mayor has other responsibilities this evening, so he said I could hold the gavel. We'll start by the call to order, please.
Sure. Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Jessica Katzenmeyer,
Here.
David Roshka, Eric Torkelson,
Here.
Kathleen Dagenhart,
Here.
Brian Frank,
Here.
and Rossi Manka. I think she may be online.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll look at the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes are approved as submitted. Steve, as we get started here, a general question. Why is it that not every item that's submitted has a Plan Commission checklist? Most do, but not all.
That would probably be my item, Wayne.
Pardon me?
That would probably be the one item I had. I didn't have a checklist on that one. There were some other ordinance items as well that wouldn't have a checklist, but all of the site landscaping architectural plans will typically have a checklist, except for mine on this particular item for the LA Pub and Grill.
Thank you.
Yep.
The first item is 2A and 2B, and that's a conditional use permit for Dunkin', a proposed restaurant. Who has that tonight?
Wayne, that'll be Zach Roeder, and we're just going to be admitting an applicant to the meeting here, and we'll make a presentation.
Back to the regular.
Steve, it's hard to hear you.
Sure. We're just admitting a person to the Zoom meeting right now, the applicant, and then we will begin our presentation.
All right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So our first item today is a proposed Dunkin' at 7801 West Greenfield Avenue. This is a site landscaping and architectural design review. They're also applying for a conditional use permit, which will be before the Common Council on April 18th. 7801 West Greenfield Avenue is the lot indicated in orange on the right. It's been vacant since 2015. In the past, it had been a carpet store, contractor office, vehicle storage lot. Dunkin' is proposing a 2-tenant building. There will be a Dunkin' with a drive-through and a restaurant tenant to be named later. The zoning is C2. Restaurants are conditional use in the C2 district, as well as accessory drive-through service. And as I said, the public hearing is scheduled for the 18th of April. So the site plan, the site is designed to complement the Main Street style development that we see along West Greenfield Avenue and that the city hopes to promote. There's a pedestrian-oriented design to the front of the lot, which is on the north side, indicated at the top of the picture, where the building is situated, as well as some outdoor dining areas, as well and pedestrian connections to the existing sidewalk. The vehicle access for the property will be in the rear. There will be a drive-through, parking, and 2 driveways. You'll note the northern driveway is exit only to kind of fit the traffic flow for the lot there. There's also a proposed landscaping plan, which our city forestry team recently provided some comments on, and you'll see a condition of approval related to this, but it's a pretty well landscaped site as designed, pretty densely landscaped, especially towards the north end of the lot. In the central portion of the lot, there's a bioswale that will be managing the stormwater from the parking and paved areas. The architectural plan for the building is going to be a 1-story, just over 4,000 square foot building divided into 2 tenant spaces. The Dunkin' space will be on the east side of the building, and the future restaurant tenant will be located on the west side of the building. The proposed materials include fiber cement panels, which you'll see in the light gray pictured above. The thin brick veneer is in the dark gray, and then there's an ephes tan and accent color kind of pattern. Staff is going to be recommending adjusting the architectural plan to have a more durable material. ephes is mentioned in our design guidelines as a material that's not accepted by the Plan Commission, and the applicant has agreed to make this change. The facade composition has a very tall, clear ground floor facing that front of the lot in particular, with lots of windows and glass doors. It has several kind of vertical elements then that kind of break up the building across its length. The floor plan, it's kind of interesting floor plan here. There's 2 connected tenant spaces actually. So each tenant has their own entrance, but they also share kind of a common area at the front and share bathroom facilities. Duncan is on the east. That one has a full floor plan laid out already. The future tenant space is kind of blank at this time as a future tenant is decided. So future building permits would have to be filed for that tenant. The Duncan tenant will have, in orange, is the space that's kind of open to the public as they come in and enter a seating area and the service counter. The white area is the kitchen and staff area, and then that little blue marking on the bottom is where that drive-through window will be. It's on the rear of the building, facing away from the main street. So this project satisfies all but one guideline as shown. That guideline, as I mentioned before, was that ephes is not an acceptable material, and the applicant has agreed to the condition to change that material. So staff believes then that it satisfies all the design guideline criteria. We'd like to compliment the team on doing a good job working on this site to meet within what the guidelines are trying to get at, which is that kind of pedestrian-oriented design along Greenfield Avenue there, as well as like good, safe traffic flow throughout the site. This also satisfies our drive-through technical standards, all 3 of them that are mentioned in the design guidelines. Ultimately, staff recommends approving the site landscaping and architectural design review for Duncan, subject to the following conditions. Common Council approval, which is scheduled for April 18th, the public hearing and a vote. We also have the condition to submit some revised site landscaping and architectural plans to show a replacement for the ephes material. There's then also some certain things on the site plan which we'd like to have fixed to comply with our kind of standards. One is to replace there's a kind of a standard, with their site plans, they kind of have standard signage and stuff, and their standard signage doesn't meet our city's requirements, so there's a pole sign. We'd like them just to show that as a conforming sign. That we'd also recommend they remove 2 parking spaces to comply with our code, and adding an outdoor bike rack to comply with our code as well. And then the landscaping plan should just be approved by the City Forestry Department. They had some minor comments for some small revisions. There's also some requests for documentation of stormwater compliance, and then just coordinating work in the right of way with city engineering. We also request combining the lots into a single lot via certified survey map. Are there any questions or comments from the Plan Commission?
I want to step back again just for a moment to the Plan Commission checklist. The fact that under number 3, quality, the first item, quality materials, is not checked. It says change ephes to higher quality material. That hasn't been checked because this was published before the applicant agreed to make the change?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, staff filled out the checklist and shared our findings with the applicant. The applicant agreed to make those changes, and we recommend approval because with that change it will satisfy all the requirements of the design guidelines.
Thank you. Any discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendations.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to number 3. And who has this one?
I do, Jack
Thank
Kovneski.
you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a proposal for Archie's Flat Top. It is a, on the former site of Randy's Neighbors Inn, it is a restaurant use. Zoning is C2. At this time, there are no site changes to the layout of the site, but there are architectural changes which require Plan Commission review. This is located at 6922 West Beecher Street. In addition to Archie's Flat Top, Scratch Ice Cream is proposed to occupy the eastern tenant space in the former Randy's Neighbors Inn. Archie's Flat Top is primarily a hamburger, American food restaurant, and they will also sell alcohol too. On the architectural plan, you'll see the changes are along the street-facing facade. This includes removal of the existing awnings and siding on the first floor. That's being now replaced with new storefront windows, a glass door, and new lighting on that first floor. Signage is also proposed. These are projecting signs that will be later submitted to the Planning and Zoning Office. And then on the second floor, there is updated siding to the part that sticks out of the front-facing facade, and then the terracotta roof will be painted red to match the Beecher Meats property building just around the corner, or just down the street. For the floor plan, the first floor is proposed to be retaining that similar layout to Randy's Neighbors Inn. And on the eastern tenant space, that is going to be this proposed spot of Scratch Ice Cream. These will be connected through a header that is connecting the two spaces. And other than that, there are no real floor changes besides the two bathrooms being upgraded from just smaller to somewhat larger. The second floor will be proposed residential. This will be used primarily through short-term rental through vacation rental websites such as Airbnb and those websites. That's the proposed time. That's what's proposed this time. The design guidelines, this project, it's not mandatory because of the scope of work. It's not a new development or significant redevelopment, but it does check off most of the recommendations and guidelines of the Plan Commission checklist. You're largely seeing the activation of ground floor through large storefront windows, and then overall just an increased activation for this site. With that being said, the plan staff recommends a motion for approval. As you can see, motion one are the following conditions. Condition number one, that is checked out because since the staff report has been created, the applicant has indicated that the refuse on the site will not be in existence. Refuse will be located with Beecher Meats and West Dallas Cheese and Sausage Shop, so that satisfies our condition for that. So the remaining condition is signage and lighting plans being submitted to the planning office for review. Thank you.
You indicated that most of the items on the checklist have been approved. Which ones hadn't?
Those are environmental ones. They are just largely there. Those are 3B, I, 2, or 3B, 1, 2, and 3. Those are largely just because on the site there is an opportunity to manage stormwater because it is an existing building, and reducing impervious surface is too difficult to do in this situation because it is existing.
Thank you, colleagues. Any discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Again, any discussion? There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to number 4.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Office 6500. As Plan Commissioners can recall, this was a previously approved restaurant and bar by the Plan Commission on July 27, 2022. This is for a site landscaping architectural amendment. That being said, there are just very minor changes to the site. The use, however, is changing. The first floor will be neighborhood service office use. This is a permitted use in the zoning district, C3. And the second floor will be proposed residential. The plans for the restaurant and bar have been replaced by that use. On the site plan, the only real change is the reduction of the patio on the western edge of the property. There are no changes to the landscaping. As you can see previously, the property had a patio that extended north. This was submitted in July 22 and approved by Plan Commissioners. And the new proposal is just to reduce that patio, and it extends about halfway through that building. The architectural plan, there are no changes to the architectural plan seen. Staff is recommending that on the architectural plan itself, that signage and the kitchen hood are removed, just for clarity. For the floor plan, there are changes. The first floor, as previously stated, is going to be office space. This is going to be 1,407 square feet. There are 2 bathrooms proposed, and then 1 small conference room on the northern portion of the building. The second floor is going to be a 1-unit dwelling. There are 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths on this second floor residential. With that being said, there is a motion to approve with the following conditions. A revised floor plan being submitted to the Planning and Zoning Office to indicate the square footage on the office building, including the hallway. This has since been submitted by the applicant, since the staff report has been produced. A revised architectural plan being submitted to the Planning and Zoning Office to indicate removal of the signage and kitchen hood on the existing building, and maintenance repairs to the garage and refuse area to be noted on plans. Staff did notice that there were less than desirable conditions of the existing garage, so we are requesting that to be maintained properly to meet standards of the code. And then the third condition is a signage and lighting plan being submitted to and approved by the planning office. Thanks.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number 5 is a site landscaping architectural amendment for 8830 West National Avenue. This is the existing location of New Image Auto Body. The property owner for the site is proposing a series of improvements, including architectural repairs, some minor changes, and then some site changes as well. The zoning is C2, and light motor vehicle service is a conditional use in that district. The site plan, the paving will be redone on the northwest and east sides of the lot. You see this area here and this area up here. Concrete driveways will be rebuilt. The parking spaces will be redone with pervious pavers, and a significant amount of this east parking lot will be removed in favor of new planting beds. This kind of site change corresponds with some changes in how they're going to be doing car storage on the site. You'll see some, I think we might have some pictures at some point on here from Google Maps. Yeah, right here. You can see the cars are just kind of packed in there. With these new changes, they're going to be, having less space for that kind of jam-packed car storage and more, there's smaller spaces there, so it's going to be more orderly. The refuse area, staff noted, does need some improvement. It's shown right here as just a dumpster, so staff will be recommending refuse enclosure. Looking at the architectural plan, there's some minor alterations. The staff was able to actually help approve a building permit for kind of a necessary repair that had to go kind of prior to planning commission. It was really just a minor retaining wall that needed, or minor repair, but a necessary one for retaining a wall in the rear of the property that was in a state of disrepair. So that was already permitted, but one part of the work that has not been done yet is a kind of a rebuilding of the front portion of this building. It's going to be a CMU wall rebuilt with new door, pretty much as is, just the new door being added for access. For the design guidelines, you can see with an amendment, this is just a framework for review. It doesn't meet all of the guidelines recommendations, but it does significantly improve 5. That includes the street edge, the vehicle parking, natural features, managing stormwater, and reducing impervious surface. So given that this is a framework for review for this project, because it's just an amendment and because it really improves a lot of these, with the design of the site, staff recommends approval, just subject to submitting updated plans to show that refuse enclosure, and then including signage and lighting plans as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any discussion?
I have a discussion.
Yes, sir.
Eric, excuse me, could you just, hit the mic, thanks.
So on page 25 of my staff report, just looking at the Plan Commission checklist under 3A number or number one. On my staff report, it just says change the EFS to higher quality material. Is that still an ongoing discussion with the applicant?
I believe that was for a different item. There might be an issue with the staff report printing.
That might be a typo on our part. I think it was Duncan.
Yeah, I believe that was the Duncan condition. It might have just been printed incorrectly or created incorrectly on there. Sorry, there's no EFS on this building for clarity. So there's no recommendation for that.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have that motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to number 6.
Thank you, Wayne. Our next item is the LA Pub and Grill. The applicant and owner of the property is here, along with his team, Tony Bergerino and David Kaz, and I apologize, one other gentleman. Bruce Janzak, here representing the LA Pub and Grill. So this is a property, a former tavern at 5832 Lincoln Avenue, the former Sail Inn Tavern. It's been vacant since approximately 2020. There was a mishap on some unfortunate incident in about, I think it was January of 2020, where the front facade that you see here, the original, or the parapet wall above the storefront windows, actually fell off the building. There were a number of different brick materials on this building over the years. If we look back, the next slide shows sort of a historical view of what was there prior, but there were larger storefront windows once upon a time, and a continuous style of brick around the building. Over the years, the windows got smaller, the brick types changed on the exterior of the building, but we have a new property owner who is motivated to make improvements, not only on the outside of the building, but on the inside of the building as well. It'll still be a tavern, but they'll also be converting an existing apartment, a former apartment within the building, to a kitchen and kitchen prep area, and creating some dining space and updating the bathrooms and so on for a legitimate business that will serve the community and the neighborhood here. So the property is Zone C2, neighborhood commercial. Taverns are considered permitted uses. And I should have also mentioned here that with the new use, and I mentioned a kitchen and prep area, the applicant, Mr. Bergerino, is looking at doing different appetizers, salads, sandwiches. You can see kind of the list here. So it's offering more than just the typical, shot and beer corner bar. The floor plan shown here, the former apartment was in the back northeast corner or northwest corner of the building. 59th Street is here on the left, Lincoln Avenue here on the south for context. But the front of the bar will still feature that same front door entrance, the bar being situated here along the west side with seating, a new updated bathroom over here, and then some additional seating further back alongside the kitchen and prep area, which is here on the northwest corner. The overall floor plan of the first floor, the ground floor is about 1,900 square feet. Basement, another 1,500 square feet, for a total of about just under 3,500 square feet of building space. Now this is the current view looking at the property from 59th Street on the west, looking back to the east. You can see that the property also features a 3-car detached garage, a small patch of grass behind the building, and then the actual building up along the street edges of 59th and Lincoln Avenue. This is the site plan that sort of depicts that in the plan view here. Lincoln Avenue on the right, 59th on the bottom of the screen, and then the bar and the garage. They are proposing some site improvements as well, which will include a raised concrete patio area, both alongside and behind, between the garage and the bar. And then they'll be screened in with a fence. There's an existing chain link fence here, and then they're also proposing to upgrade the fence around the patio area. As part of staff's recommendation, we're just asking for a little bit more detail on the actual style of fence. If it's board fence or if it's an ornamental fence, the height and so on. But the intent is to put put a perimeter fence around the patio area, separating it from that of the, I guess, concrete parking apron and garage further back. The sort of the history of change over the years. The building was constructed in 1927. You can see the, sort of the original parapet wall, and then the herringbone or parquet type of brick pattern within. There's some ornamentation on the buildings, larger storefront windows, transom windows, and so on. And then over the years in 2014, I mean, this didn't all happen in 2014, but the windows got smaller, probably back in the 50s or 60s. A different type of brick was added to sort of infill those larger window openings that we're seeing here in the 1927 design. And what's remained is kind of the original brick on the west elevation and above the storefront windows, but everything below that was something different. A glass block window was added. And then, unfortunately, in 2020, they had failure of this upper parapet wall that ended up on the sidewalk down below. Fortunately, no one was hurt. New owner, Tony's here. He wants to fix the building up, but bring a viable business back to West Allis at this corner. And he's, cleaned up the rest of the facade. He's actually taken off this older Roman-style brick down below that's not original to the building. To remove that, he sort of restored some larger window openings that were there underneath, sort of this brick veneer. So these are definitely larger than what was there back in 2014. And then the plan is on that front south elevation to put new windows in. In fact, I think new windows have been installed. They're just covered up right now with wood to prevent damage during the construction and anybody passing by. It's not always occupied, so just to protect the building. And then new storefront systems for doors, and then this will be a non-functioning door, but it will look like a glass door. It's more of a just sort of an infill. Right now, it doesn't have a purpose on the exterior of the building. It doesn't function for entering or exiting the building. That'll be all done here in this central door here. The glass block window on the corner will be modified slightly. A brick pier will be added on the corner of the building, and so you'll have some balance, a little bit more balance to the building with brick and brick to sort of frame the glass block a little bit. And then up above, what's presented here is a cedar board siding with a form to sort of mimic the original design intent. And staff, in terms of architectural review and design checklist, we've been working with the applicant on maybe a more appropriate style of siding up above that storefront. The concern is, our initial thought was we'd like to see brick or something masonry up there. The concern is, though, that there's not the structural capacity, the load bearing to hold that weight up above. So I guess we shifted gears. We're looking for something lighter, something that's going to be look complementary to the building, but not just cedar paneling. We think that's just a little too flat and unarticulated for to meet our architectural guidelines. So this is just sort of the current looks of the building, and what we're going to, just a closer view, side view of the building. This is these are existing windows now. They're going to be opened up with new windows, and then this is an existing infilled window that will remain infilled to just be repainted. The sills will remain. And back within the bar, inside the building, there's the actual bar areas here. And so I think what's happening is that within the building, there's a back bar area where there's shelving and so on that's covering up this window. So it was decided probably long ago to fill that window in. The new owner, Tony, is just proposing to keep that filled in because the bar is still there. The shelving inside is still there. He's just proposing to paint that. And then the glass block window is still going to remain here and here. The brick has been added at the corner for sort of a little bit of a continuation of that brick on the front around to the side. And the parapet wall here will be increased in height. And just the east elevation, a new door, actually a new door system added into the existing opening. And then on the back side of the building, facing the rear yard, facing towards the garage, you'll have an overhead garage door, which can be opened up on nicer days to provide access inside, in and out of the bar to the patio area. So in all, some very nice changes to the overall composition. But in terms of our recommendation, we are going to be asking for a revised architectural plan. There are some things that we'd like alternatives to that cedar board siding on the front of the building, and some examples of what we've talked about would be, in the staff report, there's a small little screenshot of Perspective Brewing across the street. And while that has a brick facade above the storefront windows, I think what's interesting about that building, what could be done here, is maybe adding some architectural lighting to the front of the building, and maybe taking a look at some different materials, such as a LP or hardy board panels. There's Nichi-Ha products, or even maybe a porcelain style of tile that was contemplated for the Deco building in the downtown. But those are lighter weight materials that could be applied above the storefront windows. In maybe different layers, where you'd have maybe one plane and then you could add a different layer of framing, and then maybe upon that add accent exterior lighting, where you create less of a flat looking surface and more interesting surface to complement the rest of the architectural design that's being proposed. So that's part 1A. And then B is facade additional, I guess this is the other part I just sort of mentioned a little bit, but additional layering and relief of some of those new materials or alternate materials to avoid the flat plane look. And then C, carrying brick up the southwest and southeast corners of the building. So on those corners of the building where they're brick down below at the storefront window level, to bring that up higher on each left and right sides. Let me just go back to, so here, there's already brick proposed up to a point, and then it stops, and then you have a different material. What we're suggesting is just bringing this brick all the way up to the, more or less the roof line of the parapet here, and here. And then everything else could be a different alternate lighter weight material in between. And then part D, it's showing any penetrations within the building, for ventilation from the kitchen area, whether that's going to be through the exterior wall or the roof. We would prefer it to be through the roof. It's going to be less intrusive and not take away so much from the exterior look of the building. So then, and part 2 is just exterior lighting plan. Part 3 is a revised site landscaping plan to specify site improvements to the, chain link, if they're removing chain link fencing, any new fencing areas being depicted on the plan and referenced in terms of their type and style and height. And then lastly, providing a basic table and chair layout of the number of seats and any other screening considerations within the patio. So that's our staff recommendation, and I guess we have the applicants here who can certainly address any and all of these things, and we can certainly entertain questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Would you share with us the status of discussions with the applicant relative to these items, particularly the exterior?
Sure. I haven't heard a no yet, so I think it's a positive sign. I think it's been difficult in terms of just timing and getting a point to sit down and flush these things out. I know the architectural team here is very pressed. They're a little bit behind, but certainly they are here. They could certainly address that question a lot better than me speculating. And if you guys would like to address the Plan Commission on that, there's a podium over there. Just hit the button and you can feel free. But
I would certainly like to hear from the applicant.
sure. Tony, if you would, feel free to go up to that podium over there, and there's a button with a little person on it. Just hit that and you'll be mic'd. Yeah, there's a little, like a person on that thing. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. As far as the front of the building goes, I'm very open to any suggestions. And they wanted, I picked the cedar and I picked the Cream City brick that was originally on it. So we have plenty of Cream City brick. But as far as that goes, I believe his name was Pat Schloss, offered a facade grant, which at that point in time, I would entertain it, but I'm not married to anything on the front of that building, other than the 3 windows, opening them up right now, putting a door on. You know, if I could get the brick back on, I'd be happy at this point in time, and then we can always work about the facade later. But like I said, all I really care about is, you know, getting to an agreement on what you want, and I'm fine with that.
Mr. Tony, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, any other questions?
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
with the residence being converted to a kitchen, what is your plan use for the garage? Or is it just going to kind of sit there, or?
The garage, this is a big pill to swallow. Structurally, it's in good shape. It needs a new roof, and it's gonna get a new roof. It's gonna get maybe 2 new doors. My thought was, if the patio is successful, if you can put the garage back up there, going to the north, those 2 garage stalls will stay. Going to the south, that 1 garage stall, I might make that on the south side of the garage, make that type, with approval, of course, a tiki bar, you know, where it can service the patio, depending on labor situations. Right now, that's way down the line. If they tell me to knock down the garage, I will entertain that. But at this point in time, I have no plans for the garage.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Mr. Tony? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
You have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
The next, thanks for coming in. The next item, question for you, Steve.
Yes.
In your presentation, you say, see the attached Plan Commission checklist. The initial proposal failed to satisfy most objectives, and therefore your recommendation is to really hold.
We're recommending holding it. However, we'd like the Plan Commission to set a date. I mean, we don't want to just keep bringing it back to Plan Commission month after month saying we're not ready, we don't have a complete application. But we'd like to actually have Plan Commission set a deadline for the applicant to say, get us a plan, a complete plan that we can react to by such and such date, or we're going to reject it. Now, they could always come back and reapply when they're ready, but we'd rather set a hard deadline at this point rather than, we've been doing this since, has it been January, I think, that coming to Plan Commission with a
What would you
position to hold.
recommend, a couple of months?
Oh, I'm sorry, just 1 month.
One
We were here
month?
last month, yeah, so another 30 days to give them. If they don't have something ready for the next Plan Commission, then at the next meeting, you could make a recommendation for.
Colleagues, are you in agreement with the
I'd be in
1 month?
agreement with that, Mr. Chair.
Pardon me?
I'd be in agreement with that, Mr. Chair, 1 month.
Then our motion is to have a deadline of 1 more month, the next meeting, the April meeting.
Yep, and holding this evening, right? Correct, yep,
Yes.
okay.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank
Did we
you.
have a motion and a second on that? Was it?
Sure.
Good.
Do we have a motion? I think we did.
Move to approve.
I think we had a second.
Okay,
I'll second.
Sure we did. We had everything you need.
thank you, thank you.
Go check the tape.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you. So the next one is ordinance to amend section 1901, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. And this was before Plan Commission last month. Attorney Katie Hempel is here representing the owners, the Higgins and Mark and Colette. And As you recall, at last month's Plan Commission staff was recommending approval, for council to rezone this property. Well, council, we conducted the public hearing in March, and the council held action, and it's back before Plan Commission. So the good news is I think we've reached an agreement with the property owner and with the help of Katie's firm to present I think a positive, a mutual common, we're all headed towards a common goal of rezoning this property, but with some conditions. And those conditions that have been designed, I guess, between our city attorney and the law firm of Emerson Davis Law are basically to approve, we're all agreeing to change the zoning from I1 to C3 zoning with the condition of, just draw your attention to this part, section 2, which basically says conditionally rezoned C3 from I1 to C3 under the following conditions. Basically, the only use of the property remains as a tower service, and that's what it currently is now. Higgins is a tower service, and it's a light industrial use. And basically, it's just giving them the comfort that they can continue to do their operations. They can continue to improve their property. If you recall, back in April of 2022, there was a plan before the Planning Commission to make some significant updates to this property with landscaping, paving, drainage, a new exterior door, and a canopy on the west wall. Those things haven't happened because they're still, I guess, working on those, but I mean, there's also this hang up with the zoning. The ownership was very concerned that if we rezone this property, that it could exceed 50% of the property's value, and if it exceeds 50% of the property's value, and the property's been rezoned, now they've shot themselves in the foot, and they've made themselves a legal non-conforming use. So they want to avoid that situation. So this conditional this rezoning with these conditions does bring comfort to the existing property owner. It also brings comfort to the city in that the property would be rezoned, but also it would offer some assurances that it's not going to go from a tower service to, I'm just going to throw a use out there like self-storage or a car wash or something along that line. It does preserve this as a tower service, which has been a good functioning building use within the city for decades. And then in the event that those conditions above the part A and B aren't met, in other words, if Higgins sells the property to someone else or stops using it as a tower service, it reverts back to the C3 zoning, which would be rezoned to. So in other words, if it's C3 zoning, it can't be a car wash, or it can't be you name it. Updates are on code, right? So then the last part is that in the event the conditional zoning is amended, all non-conforming use rights of the property under the section of the Wisconsin statutes shall apply. And then basically what that section 62.23 paren 7H basically is here. It's just sort of noted that, but the main point is that for a non-conforming use, it cannot be extended. In other words, it can't be extended beyond the limits of the property. And then also the total structural repairs or alterations of in such non-conforming building, premise or structure, fixture, shall not during its life exceed 50% of the assessed value of the building, premise or structure, fixture, if the non-conforming use is discontinued for a period of 12 months, any future use of the building, premise, structure, fixture. You hear me? Okay, so basically these conditions provide comfort to the property owner, and then also we have the common goal of the property is rezoned with these conditions, and if something changes where it ceases to become a tower service, or if Mr. Higgins decides to cease business as a tower service and come back, 13 months later, he's got to come back with a conforming use to the C3 district. So I think everyone's protected here on both the business side as well as the city side, and we accomplish the ultimate goal of compliance with our city's 2040 land use plan. Thank you.
Steve, a couple of questions. On pages 36 and 38 of your report, those two pages are quite similar. A few words are different. But what is the difference between the two? And there's a reference to a public hearing was held March 7th, and what was the outcome of that hearing?
Yeah, the hearing on March 7th, the council held action. And they had to hold action because the Plan Commission hadn't acted yet. So there's clause within the statutes that you have to, in this case, we needed the Plan Commission's recommendation before the council could proceed. So council held action, just like the Plan Commission, and then we're back here tonight to get hopefully a favorable action of the Planning Commission. And with that, we'd go back to council committee and report back to council on your recommendation this evening. If it's favorable, I think the council will move right along with that and make their decision.
And what is we have two pages 36 and 38.
Sure.
What's the difference?
I don't have those in front of me. You have that, Jack? So the staff report was written last week before we had these conditions, that conditions that were worked out by our attorneys. So I'm not sure that, I don't have the staff report in front of me, but you could certainly take a look here. Okay. All right, I'm looking at it here. Yeah. So I've got a page 2. My page numbers are maybe a little bit different, but I'm looking at a picture of a zoning map with a recommendation on the bottom from the Common Council, recommending Common Council approval. And then the first page is basically what was presented at the last Plan Commission meeting on February 22nd.
Okay.
So the new information I bring tonight is basically that we're still recommending that the zoning take place, that it be rezoned from light industrial to C3. But the new information is that we've had a meeting of the minds with the attorneys here tonight, as well as our city attorney, and this conditional arrangement seems to be the comfort level for the private property owner as well as the city. And with that, we are still recommending approval with that common goal.
All right, thank you. Colleagues, discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, more of a clarification. So we would approve to zone it C3. They would still be able to continue their use,
Yeah,
but it has to be the exact same use as they're doing now,
yeah,
which is what I thought we were doing to begin with.
yes.
And then if he decides to change the use, it goes directly to C3. He has to conform. Am I correct on that?
If he's going to change the use, let's say he wants to become, Joe's Restaurant or something like that, he's got to make sure that that restaurant would have to be something allowed in the C3 district, right?
So whatever he changes to has to be allowed in the C3 district, right?
Right.
And then if he sells it,
If he sells it to another tower service within 12
months?
months, we're fine. We're good.
then we're fine.
We keep going.
But
Yep,
if he sells it to somebody else, they have to conform to C3.
correct.
I think that's,
If he sells it to someone else after that 12-month period, say month 13 or something like that, that person that buys it in month 13 would need to be something other than a tower service. They would need to be a conforming C3 use.
so he has 12 months to make sure that it's a tower service, and that's it. And if it's vacant for 12 months, someone comes in, it doesn't matter, it has to go to C3.
It would have to be a C3
Unless
permitted
another
use.
tower service came in within
Right,
those 12
right.
months.
So, yeah, exactly. So it's, the Higgins business can continue to run for the next 50 years as is. They're doing a great job. And if someone else buys that property, they could continue to run it for another 50 years as long as it's another similar use to the Higgins Tower Service, another tower service. So the problem would be if you bought it and you wanted to run a tower service, but you bought it in month 13, you wouldn't be allowed to run your tower service from this place. You have to buy it within that window of time where,
Right,
that 12-month window of time. Yeah.
right, which is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the only verification I had.
Okay, thank you.
Further conversation, discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So I know a month ago there was a representative here from Higgins, and they had mentioned that there was a number of objections. I don't know if that was one or multiple concerning with the rezoning. Does this agreement with the city meet, satisfy their objections that they had? Because I don't know what those objections were.
Sure. Yeah, it was basically they were set against rezoning it at the time because they felt it was, it was sprung on them and it was a last minute thing. They hadn't had much time to react or absorb it all, and they were kind of reeling from that. So they were opposed to the concept of it. But after some further discussion, and Katie Hempel is here representing the law firm, and I think the outcome is a positive one that we can all move forward upon, and we have that confirmation from Davis, Edmondson Davis, as well as our city attorney's office. So, and staff agrees that this is a good solution to last month's conflict. And if Plan Commission so chooses to proceed with a recommendation for council approval, we just ask that it be as amended here with these conditions incorporated as part of the motion.
I apologize, Jessica. I thought David was about to speak. Yes, sir, go ahead.
No, I believe I was one of the ones last time that was pushing to give them more time, and I'm glad that everybody came to an agreement that seems to work. So I would move to approve with the conditions as stated.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Thanks. All right, thank you. This is the proposed alley vacation in the 7400 block of just north of Greenfield Avenue between 75th and 74th Street, immediately north of us to our right, my right. And then this is behind Noble Senior Living at 7400 Greenfield Avenue. It's behind Timbers, or Double B's, 7412 Greenfield, and it's behind the Makokos property, which is owned by Scott Bunker, RMSB, 7420 Greenfield. So we had originally been working with these owners on, cleaning up some of the stuff they have behind their property. Timbers has some smoker equipment and some other fixtures behind their building, which help them do business. But the gist of this whole thing is that there's an old portion of city right-of-way here that runs along this blue line here, and then basically runs into the 7400 building, and then goes north, and then comes back to the east to 74th. It's this yellow or gold section here that would be vacated, and in the vacation process would then thereby be go from public to a private landmass. And each of these property owners that front that subject vacation area would get the benefit of that little chunk of land, that frontage. So in the case of Makokos or RMSB, they would receive a small little chunk here, and then Timbers would receive another part here, and then the 7400 property would receive a portion here, and that would be all sort of structured as part of the conveyance of land. Access to the 7400 property would be maintained, and then the dumpsters that are currently behind these buildings right now would need to be on private land. And in some cases, they'd be automatically on private land, like in the case of Timbers, and the Makokos property, they're actually already on private land. But the Noble Senior Living has their dumpsters probably for the past 30 or 40 years. They've existed on the west side of this home, so they'd need to find a place here on the north side of the property to locate those. So this this has been noticed in the official paper. We've served notice to each of these abutting property owners. With this vacation, there would be easements, and there is storm sewer underground that does run in the sort of same configuration, but the actual flow of traffic does not run through this area. The flow of traffic is really running, here across the city land, which looks like a post office parking lot, but it's actually a city-owned land, and then it runs across another city-owned piece of land here, and then out to 74th. So with this vacation, there would also be a resolution coming back before Common Council to rededicate alleyway for traffic flow, and also respecting the working around the private property areas that would be created as part of the subject vacation. So this was introduced on March 7th. There was public notice served via Class 3 notice served to abutters. We have received no objections to date, and public hearing scheduled for April 18th. Thank you.
Steve, are you looking for the Plan Commission to do something?
Yeah, we would need, I guess, we're just looking for if you have any questions, but we're looking for a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Any discussion?
I just have one question.
Sure.
Is that gonna, is there any traffic that goes through there at all, or?
Through this area, yes, but everywhere else, I mean, there's all that's been happening in the majority of this area that we're vacating is private businesses have been storing their dumpsters there. They've been parking in it. They've been putting smokers out there, or things that they do business with are behind within these areas. So the real benefit of this is that these property owners that abut this, they obtain some additional land area, and they have more room to expand, maybe put a patio or do function, run their businesses. So that's a real benefit. But at the same time, with the rededication, we're not going to lose any access, or we'll maintain easements for utilities, so we won't have to close up the storm sewers or anything like that. That'll all be maintained. But then the actual alleyway itself is going to be reshaped to sort of run, I'm just sort of drawing it out with a cursor here, if you can see that, but just sort of run along this area. It may actually run through part of this vacation area here a little bit, so but that'll be redone as part of this whole thing, likely on April 18th.
Okay.
And that'll be done via CSM. So.
Are there further questions of Steve? Yes, Alderman.
Steve, is there going to be easements that I know you're going to maintain?
Yeah.
Dan, speak up, please.
Yeah, the question was, will there be easements? And there will be easements that are maintained for all utilities and access through this area. So if you're used to driving behind this area from 74th to 75th or vice versa, you'll still be able to do that after it's been vacated, because we're going to be rededicating a portion of alley for that flow to continue. Sure.
Thank you. Any further discussions or questions of Steve? There being none, is there a motion to support the vacation of part of the alley north of the 7400 block of West Greenfield Avenue?
If so moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. It passes. Thank you.
Before your next item, I apologize. I have to step out for a minute, but you already have a quorum, right? So you can continue? Okay.
And is number 10 next?
That is correct. Thank you, Chairman. Number 10 is for a zoning code update. Staff, after the May 6th zoning code adoption, staff has begun an overview of the zoning code and have recommended changes to further align with the goals of the zoning code. One of the first items is car washes. So car washes exist in the C3 district and C4 district. They are permitted uses currently. Part of our design review guidelines goal was mitigating impacts that distract from experience of the public realm. We as staff view that car washes kind of hinder these design review guideline goals, and ideally we want to question where do car washes align to existing uses and character of commercial districts. Currently, car washes and car uses are largely in our C4 zoning districts. We want to keep this in alignment with the current zoning map, and we are recommending for removal of car washes as an allowed use in the C3 zoning district. That's one of the first items. Additionally, instruction training as a
So
conditional.
Stay with the car wash.
Okay.
With this change, will car washes that are not in the appropriate area be asked to close?
No, those will be legacy non-conforming uses. They're grandfathered under the old zoning code if this were to be approved.
All right, thank you.
The next item is instruction training as a conditional use. Currently, we separate these into two different uses based on intensity. Instruction training, 16 or more persons at a time. This is a conditional use permit requirement. And if you have 15 or fewer persons at one time, this is a permitted use. Largely, staff views this as burdensome towards applicants and potential business owners. Largely, there's a conditional use permit process that detracts from the potential for businesses to be attracted to West Allis. We have seen some businesses in the occupancy permit process that have requested to be an instruction training use, but have been limited because they were not able to, they did not pursue the conditional use permit process, so they are currently limited. Additionally, the occupancy standards are regulated by the building code, so the zoning code will still be regulated through that matter. We are proposing to change the threshold from the 16 or more persons at a time for the permitted use to 31 or more persons at one time. That is the new conditional use. Is there any discussion on that? The next item is food production. Largely, we see food production as something that could be similar to the restaurant and restaurant limited uses. Currently, food production is a conditional use permit requirement in every commercial district. We see smaller food production uses as appropriate and desirable additions to commercial areas in the city. This could include pickling operations, ice cream making. These are all small scale things. An example is the pickling business that is now occupied by Carrie's Krispies. These required conditional use permits, but they are small scale and do enhance the neighborhood. So we are proposing to change the name of Food Production Limited to just Food Production, and then also add the new use category, Food Production Limited, as a limited use in commercial districts and a permitted use in industrial districts. Limited use criteria to match those of Restaurant Limited. Currently, that would match the 2,000 square feet or less than 2,000 square feet criteria that allows for restaurants as a limited use to be in existence. That's largely the idea behind that zoning change. Any comments?
Thank you.
This one is a little less intense. It's just electrical vehicle charging stations as a accessory use. This is compliance with the ICC, the International Council of Code. Is that correct? That's to accommodate for the growth of the electric vehicle market. Accessory dwelling units. Originally, one of our goals with the May 6th update was to allow for more housing density and a greater mix of housing types. Accessory dwelling units allow for these benefits to be seen, such as taxable value increases, increased population potential, and increased access to housing. We are proposing that the accessory dwelling unit building coverage goes from 700 to 800 square feet to allow for more potential, housing units to be constructed if that is something that is limiting applicants currently. We have not seen any accessory dwelling units being constructed so far, but currently this aligns with other municipalities in the area. Any comments? The next item is bicycle parking design standards. This is to further increase the multimodal transportation options for residents. We are promoting that. As noted, the May 6 update created bicycle parking minimums. We're taking this step further to further promote the benefits of bicycle parking in the city. Additionally, this aligns with our goals and recent membership of a bike-friendly community as by the Wisconsin Bike Federation. These will better align with their goals and our goals to be a bike-friendly community. Restaurant parking standards, that's one of the last ones. Currently, restaurant use has a maximum parking regulation of 40% of the building capacity. This has, in turn, been difficult for staff to identify parking maximums early in the planning process because we typically don't know the occupancy of every building until middle to late in the planning process. So we are proposing that new standards for restaurant parking regulations are a maximum of 1 per 150 square feet. And then the rest are minor textual changes. 1944, tweak language from open to the public to not including warehouse storage or floor area devoted to retail space / customer service. And 19.5, we are updating all mentions of PDD, planned development district, to PUD, planned unit development. Thank you. We are looking, staff is looking for recommendation for approval for the Common Council review. Thanks.
Before that motion, on the EV charging stations, since this is a growing phenomenon, how do we stay out ahead so we have best practices? If somebody swings into the city and says they want to put up electrical charging stations just anywhere, who regulates that? Who oversees this?
So this is something that we're going to be adding to the zoning code to kind of address those concerns that we have. We currently don't have this as an accessory use, so we are going to add criteria to adhere to the accessible guidelines for the ICC. That's the code that is used across the country pretty largely. So that's largely going to be the guidelines for this proposal. I don't know if you had anything to add, Zach?
Yeah, I can just share right now and anybody could really add an electrical vehicle charging station. They would just need to acquire a building permit, and our code enforcement department would review and make sure it meets the their own internal kind of standards or whatever for that construction. When we came to them, we wanted to just try to increase the clarity that the city has about where electrical vehicles charging stations are allowed, which is pretty much anywhere. But we just wanted to include this criteria, with the code enforcement team, that they have to meet these accessibility guidelines. So that's things like, the height of where the charging port is, stuff like that. So it's ADA compliant, things like that. So that's really what our goal with this is just to make it more clear that we allow these, and then that there's a basic set of rules governing them.
So at this moment, if a gas station, for example, wants to put in a charging station, do they have to come to the city, or they can just go ahead and do it?
They would have to come to the city still right now. They'd have to acquire a building permit, and they still will after this change. This is just to kind of, sometimes people will maybe come to us and be like, I don't see that it's allowed. Is it even allowed? We want to make it very clear that it is allowed, and that that we have a set of rules for them.
Colleagues, any discussion about any of these items? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Further discussion? There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion passes. Thank you for a constructive meeting. Anything else?
We do have some more items, yes.
Oh, where are they?
Yes, so the next item is an OpenGov tutorial requested by Commissioner Torkelson. So I'll just give a brief kind of intro to this, and we can kind of do it live. It shouldn't take too long here, but we just want to kind of show you what the applicant sees and kind of what the staff sees during the OpenGov process here. So the city has, now has this platform, OpenGov. It's, just basically a part of our website that,
Thank you.
and that all of our applications really throughout the city are hosted on. So of course it didn't work, and I will hopefully, there we go. So this is what people will see when they get to this page. So if we have, an applicant, like all of our applicants today, when they wanted to come to the city, they go to this page. Sometimes we'll send them a link directly to the application, but you can type in planning application, and it brings you right to our application here. It kind of gives an overview of it, and then you can start the application process. So when you're doing this, you'll sign up, or if you have an account, you can log in, or you can sign up. I'll sign up personally, why not? This is my personal email, so everybody, all the members of the public can see this now. I don't remember the password already, but it's fine. Hopefully it'll just let me in. So you can kind of fill out your contact information and stuff here, and this will be stuff that is, in here for all your applications, that it's always kind of stored in there, so you don't have to always fill out the same stuff when you're getting, your planning application and then your occupancy permit, your building permits. You just kind of, have all this information stored in there. So there's certain things that can be pretty nice about this. It kind of makes things go a little bit smoother. If you're starting a project, say we're rebuilding City Hall or something, you will choose your project's address in here, and then it'll kind of link your whole application to this location. As you kind of go on, then we have some kind of notices and stuff for the applicant. They can kind of read that to get some more information about our process and things like that. We have them choose, just for our information, kind of who's actually doing the application. Sometimes we'll have an architect doing it. Sometimes it'll be a business owner. Sometimes it'll be a property owner. So we'll say in this case, they own a business and the property, and they're filling out their own application here. Then they can choose their type of review that they want to request from the planning application. So typically that'll be something like a site landscaping review. Maybe this person's doing a conditional use. Let's say we're making a restaurant. And if they're selling alcohol or something, it'll kind of give them some notices about this. Will you be serving food? It kind of tells you some more information about other kind of things you might need to apply for. You also have to, of course, select that. Then we'll have directly in the application, then they can upload their attachments that we request as the planning commission, like your project description or your site plans, things like that. And then I don't think, without those, it won't let me go on, I don't think. So I'll have to kind of, they're required, so I have to include them there, and then it'll have me pay some fees, and that's it. So it's pretty simple from the applicant side. You really just kind of fill out your basic information, choose what you're applying for, and upload your plans. Now from the staff side of things, we get to see more kind of details and things like that. Let me kind of pull this up here. Might take a second. That's not it. And so I'm just going to kind of pull up the planning application here. This is kind of the city has all kinds of applications in here that you can work on. And I just want to kind of show you some of the things in here. So, the city has a variety of different documents that can be automatically sent to the applicants once they reach a certain stage. You'll see we have, this is probably the thing that I really want to show you here is the workflow. So there's kind of this whole behind the scenes process going on in all of these applications that, staff had to kind of build out beforehand, that kind of sends it to a bunch of different places so that we can kind of do the review. So, it starts when the person submits their form and pays their fees, and then it goes to a bunch of different people. You'll see this huge list of people, just everybody who, from different departments to just kind of get their eyes on it and be aware of it. Certain departments will typically, share their comments at that time. So, right off the bat, we can get comments about, landscaping, from our forestry department, or about, lot line things from our engineering department. So we can get a lot of information right off the bat there. And that's even before we do our kind of normal meetings and stuff. If there's, for like a conditional use, there's a lot of kind of legal notices and stuff that have to be created. And so based on the information that's kind of inputted by staff, it kind of automatically generates a bunch of these documents for us. As we go on, it then kind of follows that process where, we'll share our kind of staff report directly with the applicant through the application. That's one of the nice things you can do, is you can share documents a lot easier in OpenGov. Before we had to, email a PDF to somebody, but then if the PDF is too big, you have to put it into something and then convert it to some other thing and then, whatever. Now we can just do that all straight through their application in OpenGov, which is nice. And if an applicant has an updated set of plans, they can easily upload it there and it just shows up as a new version. And then you can kind of click through all the different versions and see what the changes have been made to it are. Over time, then they'll be notified after plan commission will happen, and we'll send them a letter to the developer of the project to kind of tell them what happened in the plan commission, and it kind of keeps going on. And there's kind of other steps in there as well. So overall, it's a pretty nice system for us to be able to kind of see the process a little bit more. It's helped us improve it a bit, I think, as well, just kind of seeing the steps that we've been doing, and it gives us better kind of communication with the applicant too. So, I think overall it's generally pretty easy for people to use. Obviously, more and more people are getting familiar with using stuff online. Some people may not be as, may not have as much fun using it as others, but it's overall a step in the right direction. I don't know, Steve, do you have anything to add there?
Just one thing with the previous way we were doing it, we just had a static application, a PDF link to on our website, and people would submit that application with plans, and it would usually just go to one person. If it would come into me, or it would come into Zach or Jack, and if you're gone for the weekend or for a week vacation, there it sits in your inbox, and no one else sees it. The beauty of this platform is that if one person doesn't kick the tires on an application over a day or two, I've got other people. We've got other people in the city that are looking at it and are starting the process of moving it. So it's a lot better platform in terms of the number of people that see it, rather than just a very few in the previous method.
So it's like a more streamlined platform, and then it's kind of what I gathered from the presentation. Now, are you able to run reports and create dashboards for kind of how a project is moving on its journey? Is it on track, behind schedule?
You know a lot more about that, Zach.
Yeah, so there's it kind of tracks the workflow as you go along it. So anybody in the city and the applicant can see what stage it's at, and they'll see what future stages it still has to get to. And then you mentioned reports and stuff too, and there's not necessarily a specific kind of report that's created for that individual one. There's that application, anybody in the city and the applicant, they can go and check the status of it. But at a broader level, the city can also get more data on all of its applications, where are the locations of all these applications, how many fees are being generated by these different types of applications, things like that. So, and we can see over time, how many applications for this type in this year, things like that. So it kind of gives the city some more data to work with too.
Well, Steve and Zach and staff, thank you for doing this. At least for me, it was just a nice overview.
Yeah, glad we can share that. Any other questions or comments on this? All right, we can move on to the next item, Mr. Chair. Is that all right?
Please, thank you.
All right, great. Next is just an update on our comprehensive plan. So we may have shared with you before that the staff is going to be working on an update to the city's comprehensive plan. This was done in pretty recently in 2020, just kind of a minor update to kind of meet some legal requirements. And now we're kind of going to flush out that kind of full update. And so staff has developed a public participation plan that the council have they approved it yet, or is it going to be approved? Authorized to proceed. Okay, so the council has seen that as well, and so we have now that kind of have this broad structure to work with for this update and a timeline for you. So it's going to be kicking off here in the next couple weeks. April 10th is going to be the kind of official announcement of it through social media, sharing an online survey for the first kind of stage of engagement as well. And it's really going to be promoting this first event, which is an open house that's going to be held right before a couple hours before Plan Commission next month. And so we encourage all of you to stop by the library if you have the chance beforehand. We're probably going to schedule Plan Commission for a half hour later that day, just to give people time to get back over here and stuff if you'd like. to stop over there. It's going to be at the library in the Constitution Room, and we're going to kind of have a bunch of stations set up for people with different maps to kind of show what are the assets of West Allis, what are things that are West Allis does well, different places in the city that are great, and things we can build on, and what are some things that where is there an issue, where is there a traffic problem, or where is there a property that is a problem, things like that. So that's that kind of first stage is going to be happening from throughout April and May, where we're going to be kind of doing a variety of different kind of outreach events. We're going to be working with the Youth Commission, do kind of a workshop with them. We're going to do a variety of kind of tabling events at different events going on around the city, as well as this open house. That'll be that first stage from April to May. In June, we're going to be focused, our engagement will be focused on visioning, so kind of envisioning what the city's future could be, what we want West Allis to be like, in 20 years. So that's going to be happening throughout June. Again, we're going to have an open house, some online engagement through surveys and things like that, and then a variety of like tabling events as well. In July and August, we're going to be focusing then more on the kind of concrete recommendations, like what should the city actually do in this area or in this area in the next 20 years. And for that, we're going to continue to do those kind of a variety of different engagement things, also adding in things like working with our neighborhood associations on specific areas of the city, things like that. And then staff will then be kind of working on the plan's development throughout September and October. And then we aim to get approval in November and December from the Plan Commission and Common Council. So that's kind of our general timeline. We just wanted to share that with you, kind of let you know that that's going to be upcoming. We'll share you more information about the open house as that comes up as well. We love it. You guys are great. Obviously, representatives of the community who are informed about things going on. If we definitely encourage you attend that open house if possible. We try to schedule on a day where you're going to be kind of coming up this way anyway. So that'll be that first one. Any questions or comments about the comprehensive plan update? All right.
Next item, please.
All right, this is the last item. Project tracking updates. Just a few different things. From last month, we had Hoya Zam, the jewelry store on Greenfield. They applied for building and occupancy permit, so that project's moving forward. Dunham Transmission and Fire Cycle Fitness both obtained conditional use permit approval by the Kempton Council. Our January items, that 92nd and Cleveland right-of-way vacation was completed. They're kind of late in the game. There's some kind of minor adjustments that are going to need to be made. So they're minor enough that staff is just kind of working on those internally. There's some things with, I think, access to different kind of utilities and stuff like that kind of weren't caught at the outset. Easements. Thanks, Steve. Helium, they also, that is in Sona Lofts there, shown on the right. They applied for building and occupancy permits as well. Blast Cleaning Technologies, they applied for building permits. You'll be seeing a CSM from them at the next month's Plan Commission meeting. Some items from last year then, the CBRF on just over here on 75th Street, that item was again held by council, and that we'll keep you updated on what eventually happens with that item. Big B Coffee, they applied for building permits. So that construction on that will likely get started in the next month or so. Then once those permits are approved, they have some conditions that still have to be satisfied. Taco John's applied for occupancy. As you might have seen on Greenfield, they're almost at the end of construction. There's still some minor things they have to work on. They have some paneling that's out and some paneling that's the wrong color, so we aren't able to sign off on that yet. But Makers Row, you'll be seeing grading start for that. That's the site right next to Sona Lofts. They'll be starting later this spring. And the Deco Plaza that the Plan Commission and Council approved, that officially begins on April 1st. Right now the city and the business owner are kind of working out the plan for the different barriers and stuff like that for securing that site. Any questions from the Plan Commission?
A question, is there any updates for the gas station on 84th in Greenfield?
Steve?
No, other than they haven't pulled a building permit yet, and I think with the it's the same owner as the one on 84th and Beloit, and what I understand is that they're going to start. They've demoed that building on 84th and Beloit with the intent to move forward towards building permits and building that one. However, I think they've kind of stalled on 84th and Greenfield, just given the increased costs. The economy and interest rates, so I think they're pausing a bit on that. Not to say that they're not going to do it, but They just haven't been as fast as I thought about a year ago.
No, thank you for that. I saw that they've already started construction on the 84th and Beloit one, but it would be nice to see something going on the 84th and Greenfield.
Anything else? Thank you for your presentation. Is there any other business to come before this august body? There being none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.